We are pleased to have with us this morning political expert Blois Olson of Fluence Media. He joins us to talk about the volatility in Minnesota's elections and discuss what issues are impacting voters this fall. So Blois founded his first agency at age 26 and built it to be one of the most respected at integrating technology to maximize public relations, litigation communications, and public affairs campaigns in the country. The same year, he co-founded a Minnesota political website where he predicted that Governor Jesse Ventura would be elected. You did? Could. Oh, could be elected. Okay, well, like that's impressive. I don't think anybody thought that. Anyway, he sold the firm and left the political publishing business in 2008. Since then, he served as executive vice president and principal at Thunheim. He still serves as counsel to Thunheim and their clients. In 2012, he founded Fluence Media. He works with businesses and organizations on media and content strategy that synchronize online and social channels and strategies with traditional media in high-stakes scenarios, public affairs campaigns, and for growth organizations. In 2011, he was recognized one of 200 Minnesotans you should know by Twin Cities Business Magazine, was named one of 7 2012 Marketers of the Year by Minnesota Business Magazine, and named to the 40 under 40 by the Minneapolis-St. Paul Business Journal at age 31. His morning take, daily tip sheet and radio segments are a must-read and listen for business and political leaders in the Midwest. Morning Take started as an email to 50 friends and clients and now has over 4,000 daily readers and is a daily feature on WCCO 8:30 a.m. He is on the must-call list of national media and agencies on both coasts for what's happening in business and politics in the Midwest. His analysis and clients have been featured in the Wall Street Journal, Politico, the New York Times, MSNBC, CNN, and numerous other national and local media outlets. So please join me in a very warm TwinWest welcome for Blois Olson.
Thanks, Danette. I asked for a fancy mic. No, I need to check if it works. You guys, is it working? I don't think this one's working. All right. Due to time, we'll just use this one. Thank you very, very much. I will just start by saying it's good to be home. I consider this my home chamber. I see many friends and fun faces in the crowd, and that's really nice. As I thought about this, I've given this little presentation all over the Midwest, but I don't think I've ever been allowed to speak here alone. So I've either ticked off anybody who I've ever been on a panel with, or I've gotten to the age where they just say, he's going to dominate a panel, let's just let him speak by himself. A lot of people wonder kind of where I came up with some of the theories that I came up with, and I come up with, because Mom didn't tell me to grow up to be a political pundit. But I was a paper boy as a kid, and I have a theory that if we just let kids deliver newspapers today, we'd solve a lot of our problems. A, I woke up early and learned how to work hard. I came home from school and delivered the afternoon paper. I went and knocked on doors and asked for money. I then had to pay for my product by sending a check every month to the newspaper company. And I read the newspaper on my way to deliver it. And so right now, I just do that in a different way. It's just an email that goes out every morning by 7 a.m. But if you think about kind of the generation we're in, the technology we use, and, you know, I still consider myself fairly young despite my growing age here, the way in which we consumed and taught our kids just not so long ago was very, very different. And so let's just keep that in mind. I will also say that as you go through this, remove yourselves from kind of today. Remove yourselves from last night's vice presidential debate. This will be quick. It will feel quick. And we'll take some questions at the end. But here at TwinWest, you know, because of what we just saw of legislators working together, having relationships, that this is kind of the way it's supposed to work. Not very many chambers have this, where legislators show up with business leaders on a regular basis and actually build authentic relationships. And if we just had more authentic relationships, we'd probably be better off. So, if you can't see the screen, I'm sorry, but I watched George Will last night deliver a very eloquent speech without any slides, and I thought, wow, I have a long ways to go. So I use slides in my crutch. But basically, since 1990, we've been the most politically volatile state in the country. So why? Because we rely on technology. Okay. All right. So here's a little disclaimer. Normal people are not spending an hour and a half this morning thinking about this. Most normal people did watch a little of the vice presidential debate, but most of them listened to music or something else on the way to work today. There's 22 days. Minnesota hasn't had an election other than one in 1994 that was decided before the last 10 days of the election. So anything I say here today is totally circumspect because we're 22 days out, not 10. After the 2012 or the 2010 election, the exit polls asked, are you going to be disappointed in Republicans in Congress? And 59% of U.S. voters said yes. So even after we elected them, we didn't have confidence that we'd be any farther 2 years later. And here we are 2 years later, and Congress's approval ratings at an all-time low. Slide. So this is what the Midwest voter looks like, slide. And this is what today looks like. And if you Google Minnesota weather, this is actually what it says, because our politics in Minnesota are a lot like our weather. Chance of sunshine, cloudy, seasonally hot, or freezing chance of wind, or things from the sky which don't even have a name yet. And that's kind of like our politics. It's really unfathomable what happens here in elections. Slide. So we are always one typo, one tweet, one Facebook post, one gaffe away from democracy becoming democracy. That's democracy. That's democracy. That's democracy. That's democracy. That's democracy. That's democracy. 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 And let's pause for a sec. Think about it. The President of the United States held a beer summit to solve a pissing match between a cop and a professor. Okay? And last night, and in Wisconsin, this is democracy. And then when senators leave, that's democracy. So as you think through what we've been through the last few years, what has happened in Minnesota amongst volatility has really started to spread to other parts of the Midwest. In fact, I think I can argue very passionately that Wisconsin has taken over as a little more volatile than Minnesota. Go ahead. So as we think about volatility, it's a stormy story. So let's go through the last few years. These maps have, the conventional partisan maps here are opposite, just to make sure you're awake this morning. So let's look, 2006 gubernatorial election in these three states, 2008 presidential in these three states, and 2010 gubernatorial election in these three states. If you ran your business the way these people are having to predict elections, your bankers wouldn't be very happy. So, we're 22 days out. Anything can still happen. Because in 1990, we elected Paul Wellstone and Arnie Carlson on the same day. And Republicans took control of 2 seats. In 1992, Bill Clinton and DFLers took 9 seats. In 94, Rod Grams and the GOP took 16 seats. In 1996, Paul Wellstone, Bill Clinton, and the Republicans took 1 seat in the House. In 1998, we did this, and the GOP took 7 seats. In 2000, we did this, and the DFL took 2 seats despite George Bush winning nationally. 2002, we did this, and let's remember that the October 25th will be the 10-year anniversary of the Wellstone plane crash. That was a day where if you, Wellstone and Moe were favored going into that election. And let's remember that Governor Pawlenty had the largest fine in political history in Minnesota and still won. That's not good or bad. It just shows that if that happened 15 years ago, people would drop out of races. And now he got elected. 2004, John Kerry actually underperformed Al Gore in Minnesota. And DFLers picked up 13 seats in the House. In 2006, DFLers picked up 19 seats in the House, and we elected Amy Klobuchar and Tim Pawlenty on the same day. In 2008, Barack Obama and the DFLers only picked up 2 seats. And in 2010, we elected Mark Dayton, and the Republicans picked up 16 seats in the Senate and 25 seats in the House. Now, if you don't have whiplash or feel like you're watching a tennis match, then I don't know that you're living here in Minnesota. And so why is this happening? That's the big question. It's because the voter's brain has become split. So let's talk about the voter. A little therapy here. Let's look about health care. For 10 years, we agreed in this country that health care was a top priority of the federal government as a population. The things we argued over were cost and access. And the conversations I had with healthcare clients were, how are we going to address these issues and how are we going to work to get these things in line? And so then, you can see the line for those 10 years, it wasn't even close. And you can start to see it come together in 2008 during the presidential election. But we thought, when asked, was healthcare the responsibility of the federal government? We said yes. And then we started debating it. This is a trend line from the end of the election in 2008 through when we passed the Affordable Care Act or Obamacare, whichever you prefer. We changed our minds. After 10 years of agreeing that this was a priority of the federal government as a population across the country, we changed our mind. And since then, this is how it's been. And it continues to stay very even. So, I mean, we're all entitled to change our minds. But how do you think politicians or elected officials react when they've heard the same thing over and over again, and then they think they're doing what they're supposed to do and they change their mind? That would put anybody on that couch. And this is essentially what the voter looks like today. They're exhausted. And why? Because we're split. But there's 3 main media factors. Insight versus insight, channel multiplication, and democratization of media. By the way, that democratization always looks fine on my screen until it goes on a big screen. And then trust and economics. Next slide. So this is insight. And I came up with this a couple years ago that, you know, me as a paper boy reading the newspaper was insight. Me as a kid today watching one of the various polarized cable TV shows would be insight. Okay? So this was insight. But insight doesn't always have to be anger. This was, for Ventura, it was really about excitement. My friend Nate Garvis, who many of you know, has come up with this term that I've liberally borrowed called angertainers. Because really, this is what the nightly cable shows have done. So you have Ed Schultz, or you have Rush Limbaugh. And they're essentially entertainers who are trying to anger or incite their audience into action, into opinion, rather than provide insights. So after 2001 is really when this changed. You'll see here that we didn't really watch primetime cable news until after 2001, and then the audience began to double, and it continues to grow today. It's leveled off a little, but before September 11th, 2001, we were not interested in the news after the nightly news on broadcast channels. We went to, you know, dramas, sitcoms, kids' events, things like that. Next slide. And talk radio growth has continued to rise. Now, I've been a student of the talk radio phenomenon for quite some time. And who can tell me what has happened in talk radio since the boom days of Rush Limbaugh in the 90s? If you're going to compete with Rush Limbaugh, where do you move? To the right. Because you're not going to gain audience in the center. And so you've had this proliferation of channels on the right and on the left of people who are trying to get more right or more left of those big folks. And that's led to more growth. Next slide. But really the democratization of the media is what has happened over the last 5 or 6 years that has really changed things. So, YouTube, it's only 7 years old. A year after it was founded, it decided 2 U.S. Senate races in this country. The Obama race speech was on Tuesday afternoon. It had 1 million live viewers that day. That night, 8 million people watched it online. It's the #2 search engine since 2009, and 1 billion people watch videos on YouTube every day. Facebook, opened to the public in 2006. A defining moment for me when I realized that Facebook was something you had to pay attention to was in 2008. It was during the primaries. It was a Saturday night. This tells you about my social life. And they had the Republican primary debate and the Democratic primary debate, and it was the Facebook ABC debate. And I opened my laptop and watched the TV, and within 2 minutes of somebody saying a statement, Facebook would ask if you agreed with Hillary Clinton or you agreed with John McCain on that statement, and within 5 minutes, 40 to 60,000 people had agreed. How would you like to be a pollster? That is the dynamics of today's social media and the democratization of that media. Next slide. And then Twitter. Instantaneous, no filter, or staff speaking, and at least one congressman has lost his job over it. 1 in 5 online adults use Twitter or a social networking site for political purposes in 2010. So, this has led to a real feeling in this country between partisan polarized media on both sides of the aisle and the economy to the fact that we now are more closely divided on whether or not we have a haves versus have-nots society. Now, for the first time in history, we believe that our economic news is shaped by which channel we watch. You can see that this is another new phenomenon that it started since December of 2008. So if you watch Fox News or you watch MSNBC, you think you're getting different economic news than before. And we saw this last week with Jack Welch. Trust in banks. We've had a complete flip. Not a surprise, but it's part of this overall trust crash that we've had. And so if the electorate doesn't trust anybody, what are they going to do? And just for fun, be sure you know that 36% of Americans believe UFOs exist and 79% think the government has kept information about UFOs secret. So we'll give our opinion on anything. But if that's where we're at, that's the same pollster that does all the TV ratings. So they're a very fine-tuned pollster. Okay. And the trust in the media continues to become less and less. This is last year. And then this is data that just came out in the last couple of weeks. You can see that distrust increased, next slide, 5 points. Not a surprise considering what we're living through right now. But again, who can we trust? We trust people that we know. We trust relationships. Next slide. Because our common news has gone down. Audience of the broadcast news channels continues to crash. While only growth is in online media. Median age of the nightly news viewer in 2009 continues to skyrocket. And the audience in newspapers. And those lines are by age. And I can tell you that the lower lines are younger readers. Now, online has started to correct some of that. But really, if you add Facebook, Twitter, other ways in which people get their news, they're self-selecting the news they see. And they're doing it based on personal preference, politics, people who send them articles. Do you think they send them articles to have a, discussion? No, they send them articles to try to persuade them one way or another. So what's coming? This is one of my favorite slides. And this is the pinball effect from 2008. And we're in the middle of it right now. And you will see that when Katie Couric interviewed Sarah Palin, 6 million people saw that. And then, when Couric, the YouTube clips started to get 3 million views each. And then that following Saturday, 9.5 million people watched Saturday Night Live, where Tina Fey mocked Sarah Palin. And 25 million views of that on YouTube. And then 70 million people watched the vice presidential debate 4 years ago. And over 5,000 clips within 24 hours, most of which had 1.5 million views. Do you think those clips were of the entire debate? No. Do you think people looked for clips where they would disagree with somebody? No. It was all about making fun of Sarah Palin or, you know, Joe Biden. And so let's realize that we went from what was supposed to be a serious interview with Katie Couric to, you know, it looks like one of those ball pits at IKEA. Which one are you going to choose? So what happens in Minnesota this year? We have a really boring Senate race. And we have 2 constitutional amendments. We have redistricting. We have the Senate upheaval on the Republican side. We have Governor Dayton's stability, which is a factor that I don't know that anybody thought we would have. And then we have close congressional races in 6 and 8. So the marriage amendment. This is a question I get very often, so I just try to answer it before you ask. Minnesota is a very passive-aggressive state. We are passive-aggressive people. So what's the most common trait of passive-aggressive people? Or 2? Come on, guys. What? Yeah, we're prescient. We share our feelings openly and honestly? Not really. So on the marriage amendment, our passive aggressiveness is showing up in a big way. My in-laws live across the street. They have 2 vote yes signs. They are evangelical voters, both union retirees. They apologized to me for their sign. You don't have to apologize. That's how you feel. No, but I know you don't have signs in your yard anymore because you're nonpartisan now, and we don't want to offend you, and we just want you to know why we really feel that way. I'm not surprised. And for crying out loud, you're my elders. You don't have to apologize to me for your views, just like I don't have to apologize to you for my views. We're family. That should be a bond enough. And that is happening all over this state. People do not want to talk about this. It makes them uncomfortable. They're worried about offending people. The lawn signs for vote no versus vote yes are more than other lawn signs. And I was talking to Senator Limmer at breakfast. He said the people in new areas of his district will see him coming and he'll hold up a thing like, hi, I'm running, I just want to talk to you. And people are closing their doors. The electorate is exhausted. This volatility, the economy, who to trust has gotten them to this point. And so on the marriage amendment, here's what I will say. The only statistical data is that the vote yes people have not gotten over 50% in any poll. And because of that, they need 53 to 54% to pass the amendment. It's the only data we have. But our passive-aggressive nature and the privacy of the ballot box make this completely and utterly unpredictable. Next one. But you'll look and see that we have a changing view on whether or not the government should be promoting values. Fewer and fewer people think they are, and ABC's latest poll shows that, next slide, that we have changed our mind on same-sex marriage, much like healthcare. We had the same views for a long time, and we changed our mind. So, legislative and statewide voting trends in Minnesota. And I'll try to make this quick. 2008 versus 2010, let's just click through and you can see what counties change. Not a lot of change overall. There's few county by county changes, but overall not that big of a deal. But you start to see the legislative races and you start to see some more significant change in districts between 06 and 010 in the Senate and between the metro area. And you will see the western metro and the eastern metro. So what was the battleground in the 80s has become the battleground again. It's stretched its way out a little bit, but TwinWest has a few of these seats. And then this is the Minnesota House in 2008 versus 2010. Next slide. And then the metro area there. So you'll see, and by the way, the colors here are back to traditional blue and red. Okay? So 6 seats needed for the DFL to win the majority in the House. By my count, there's 20 to 22 seats in play. Overall, people are in general agreement that the Republicans recruited stronger candidates in the House. In TwinWest, you have this seat where John Benson, incumbent. The index is +2 Democratic. But again, volatility, that's not a huge advantage for an incumbent going into a volatile year like this. Next. 48A, Eden Prairie, Kurt Stensrud is the incumbent, and his new district has a Democrat 4+ leaning. I think this race is I think incumbents in both of these races are probably in okay shape, but when you have that slim of a majority in these volatile times, there's no telling what will happen. Next slide. In Edina, this is an open seat, but you have a former Republican legislator, Ron Earhart, running against a Republican. It's a +9 Republican race, but both parties are throwing a lot of money independently into this race. 49B is the other kind of Edina seat. Paul Rosenthal is a former representative, and the index here is even, so this truly is a jump ball. And then just the Southwest Metro a little further is a Democratic leaning seat, but you have an incumbent there. Senate, DFLers need 4 seats to take back the majority. By my count, there's 9 competitive seats, and here are the ones in the TwinWest or West Metro and ones that everybody's watching. I threw this up because you have an incumbent senator running against an incumbent House member and somebody who won a special election out there. It's a Democratic seat, but this is Western Minnesota. This is part of the state that has flipped back and forth every 2 years the last couple cycles. And then here in the North Metro, Pam Wolf, Alice Johnson, former state rep. It's a Democratic seat. Pam Wolf got swept in last time. And then Senator Cruz's seat is, by index, 8 points to the Democrat. This will be another seat people are watching. And then this is the other big Senate seat in Egan, which reflects part of the West Metro as well, suburban-wise. And you have Ted Daly, who's the incumbent, versus Jim Carlson, who used to hold this seat, and that's a jump ball district. And then in Edina, West Bloomington, you have Keith Downey and Melissa Franson. It's an open seat, Jeff Michelle's seat. It's a +5 race. But I've long thought that this race in this area is becoming Minnesota's bellwether because this is a place where women really vote for women and have the last few elections. So, and then Senate District 44, Senator Bonhoeff, the incumbent versus former Senator David Gaither, and the index there is a +9R. So as you can see, we're in the heart of whether or not the legislature goes D or R based on the voters of the West Metro. Many of these seats, are very close. They're very competitive. There's outside forces. But if you take all those other factors, today Senator Bonhoeff launched an ad this week talking about bipartisanship. And so you're going to start to see TV ads on cable. And one of the things is these local candidates are really starting to try to be creative with the idea that they can try to break through. So there's 22 days, and we have no idea which brain is on. Because the voters are exhausted, and when people are exhausted, they either shut down or they blow up. But overall, these messages have caused this to happen. So anything can happen. Thank you.
Blois, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate that insight, and insight, not insight. Or was it insight, not insight? But I do want to remind everybody, please, I think you see from this, it's incredibly important for everybody to participate in this process, so please, November 6th, go and vote. I also want to, as we wrap up our program here, just remind you, don't forget to join fellow TwinWest members in the TwinWest Leadership Council for a fun overtime networking event on Wednesday, October 17th. That's next Wednesday? Yes, next Wednesday. TwinWest is kicking off a new and dynamic programming series that aims to enrich our business community by providing meaningful programming in the areas of networking, education, philanthropy, and leadership. So we can't think of a better way to kick things off with an overtime happy hour at Park Tavern at St. Louis Park. So please join us from 4:30 p.m. to 6:30 for great food, fun, and networking. It is a free event, but if you could RSVP on the TwinWest website so we can get a count, that would be fabulous. And also next month, our November 9th legislative breakfast program It'll be a presentation by Minnesota Revenue Commissioner Myron Franz, Governor Dayton's Chief of Staff Tina Smith, and Minnesota's Management and Budget Commissioner Jim Showalter to talk about taxes, revenue, and spending in our state. So again, special thanks to Grand Casino Mille Lacs and Hinckley, also Allina Health, Comcast, Health Service Plus, Walmart, and Swank Audiovisual. So that concludes our program. Have a fabulous day and a better weekend.